Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give a minute or two for everyone to enter the Zoom room. We're very excited for you to be here with us today. My name is Abby Ingber, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Education Alliance for Borderline Personality Disorder. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today, DBT Mindfulness in Action, Navigating Holiday Stress with Awareness and Ease. For those of you who are not aware, the National Education Alliance for Borderline Personality Disorder is a nonprofit organization that promotes education, raises public awareness and understanding, decreases stigma, promotes research, and enhances the quality of life for those affected by borderline personality disorder and related problems, including severe and chronic emotion dysregulation. We have the largest virtual resource library online with information related to BPD. We bring together clinicians, researchers, people with lived experience, and family members at conferences and webinars around the world. Our signature program is Family Connections, which is a 12-week course for caregivers of individuals with borderline personality disorder to learn psychoeducation skills and receive support. We also have a course for parents in distress due to their child's previous suicide attempt, self-harm, or other dangerous behaviors. This is our Managing Suicidality and Trauma Recovery course. Please feel free to check out our website at www.borderlinepersonalitydisorder.org for more information. Before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping messages. This program is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website in 3 to 5 business days. Your video has been disabled and all of the participants are on mute. We're going to ask that you submit your questions via the Q&A, not the chat. The presenter will answer as many questions as time permits. Please keep your questions specific to the presentation topic, as this is not a forum to ask for advice for a personal situation you may be experiencing. The opinions expressed today are those of the speaker. They do not necessarily represent the views of any ABPD. This webinar is not intended to be therapy or a substitute for therapy. As an education-based nonprofit, this is meant to be educational. We do not intend that anything said will be distressing, and we ask you to exercise self-care. If you find something difficult to hear, please sign off immediately and tend to your needs. 988 is available in the US 24/7 as a resource. Please reach out to your mental health provider or support system if needed. This holiday season, any holiday season, can be especially challenging time for individuals living with borderline personality disorder and their caregivers. Emotions often run high, routines shift, and relationships can feel more complex, making it a period when practicing coping and interpersonal effectiveness skills becomes vital. This webinar today marks the beginning of our seasonal series of workshops, emails, and resources designed to help our community navigate these emotional ups and downs with greater stability and self-compassion. Together, we'll build resilience, strengthen our skill use, and find connection during a time that can often feel overwhelming. In the heart of this season, we'll also celebrate Giving Tuesday, our largest fundraising day of the year, a powerful opportunity to give back, support one another, and invest in continued healing and growth for our community. To help us begin this journey, we're excited to welcome Gillian Galen, who will be leading us in a special presentation on holiday stress and mindfulness, guiding us in mindful practices to carry us through the season. Gillian is a senior child and adolescent psychologist specializing in dialectical behavior therapy. She is the director of training for the 3 East Continuum, an array of programs for teens that use DBT to target self-endangering behaviors and symptoms of borderline personality disorder. Dr. Galen has a particular interest in the use of mindfulness in the treatment of BPD. She is the co-author of the books Mindfulness for Borderline Personality Disorder, Relive Your Suffering Using the Core Skill of Dialectical Behavior Therapy, Coping with BPD, DBT and CPT Skills to Soothe the Symptoms of Borderline Personality Disorder, and DBT for Dummies. It is my pleasure to welcome her today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to kick off the series. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. see. All right, hopefully everybody can see this. So, all right, we are going to talk about mindfulness in action. I really like this topic. And there's a lot I did, like any diligent presenter would do. I did a little search about what's out there. And there is a lot of, articles, some webinars around specific DBT skills to manage the holidays, which is great. I am going to help you really go back to basics. So instead of giving you just a couple DBT skills, we're going to really talk about mindfulness and awareness and those types of skills, which is really where you have to start. Okay, so for people that are practicing DBT and DBT skills, it's about mindfulness at the core. Okay, so we're going to dig into how you actually use awareness and your attention to support you over the next couple months. So the holidays can be hard. I think that is pretty well known this year. It may be even harder for some. Stress is up, anxiety and depression is up. We often see an uptick in suicide and suicidal behaviors. Substance use goes up. People can feel more lonely or isolated. There tends to be more conflict in relationships. Certainly, financial stress is a huge stressor in the holidays. For those of us in the world where the holidays are dark and cold, there's people tend to be more seasonal, more vulnerable around mood. There can be workplace stress. And we actually see an increase in the use of mental health helplines. So this is a tough, tough, tough time. There can be anniversaries also that can be quite challenging during this time. So the holidays are going to come. So what are we going to do? We're going to do something different. My hope for all of you that are joining us today is that you will take something from this webinar so that you can do something differently. Okay, that you can take one of these skills and work with your awareness in a way that is going to have a really different impact on your holiday season and how you impact it, right? So we know we have to radically accept what is in front of us for the holidays, but the way we interact with it can be different. Okay, so reality is as reality is, but what we do and how we interact and interface with reality is something that we actually control. Okay, so what we can do is that we can change how we approach the holidays by paying attention in a different way. Okay, so I give a lot of talks about mindfulness, and people often say, like, just give us a definition. Jon Kabat-Zinn, I think, has a really wonderful definition that captures it and really captures it a lot about how we talk about it in DBT and teach in DBT. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Okay, so there's components here. We pay attention in a very particular way. So if you practice mindfulness that you're in your practice, whatever your practice is, there's a particular way that you pay attention. They may tell you pay attention to sound, pay attention to your breath, pay attention to sensations, right? Pay attention to a mantra. It's a particular way. And when we are mindful, we do it on purpose, right? We talk about having intention for our attention, right? We're in the present moment, okay? And we do it non-judgmentally, without judgment. So people often say, all right, so how do I do this, right? So found this great little graphic. So pay attention, right? We listen, we watch, and we consider what is naturally in front of us. Okay, we do it on purpose. We are intentional. Okay, we decide that we're going to be mindful. You can't go back and say, oh, I must have been very mindful. No, mindfulness is a decision. It's an intention for your attention. Okay, so we're going to do it on purpose. The wonderful thing, about mindfulness is that we often say when I'm teaching mindfulness, anything you can do mindlessly, you can do mindfully. You just have to decide, right? So I can watch TV and be on my phone and have a conversation, maybe eat, right? Not mindful. I can say, I'm going to be mindful and watch TV. I'm just going to watch TV, right? I'm going to wash the dishes, having a conversation, listening to a podcast, thinking about what else I have to do for the day or the evening, right? Or I can do it mindfully. I can on purpose pay attention to the sensations that I feel as I wash the dishes, right? So it's beautiful. So really anything you do mindlessly, you can turn into a mindfulness practice. We're going to do it in the present moment. We are focusing on the here and now. This is critically important for the holidays. Be present. Don't suffer something that hasn't happened yet. If you're worried about something that is coming in the future, cope ahead, make a plan, and then get back present. Okay, you only need to be in the future to make a plan. And you really only need to make that plan a couple times. Okay, and we're going to be non-judgmental, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but be curious, be objective. Okay, this is the first step. If you can do this, this will shift everything about how you can experience the holidays and like pretty much everything in your life, not to be too dramatic. Mindfully pay attention to how you are feeling, okay? The beauty of mindfully paying attention to how you're feeling and your emotions, right, is that the moment we start paying attention, okay, and we label them, we notice them, we feel them in our body, we notice what happens to us, we notice maybe our thinking, and we label them, that alone begins to bring down the intensity, okay? And it empowers you to know what's going on in your body, okay? And what we need is we need primary emotions. We need those emotions that I often call neurological events. Stimuli comes into your body in some way through your senses, and your brain produces an emotion. Emotions are important. They communicate to yourself, they communicate to other people, and they motivate action, okay? We need to be able to, at the first step, particularly when there is stress, right? And we're going into challenging situations, we need to pay attention to what are those emotions, okay? DBT has these emotions for primary: fear, anger, disgust, envy, love, sadness, shame, guilt, and jealousy, okay? These are almost all at play, okay, for many people during the holiday season. And in fact, they're often heightened. Okay, if we don't pay attention to our emotions, right, our emotions dictate too much of how we behave. Okay, so we're going to pay attention to them. Okay, we're going to watch a little video about emotions.
And there she was. Hello, Riley.
Oh, look at you. Aren't you a little bundle of joy? Aren't you a little bundle of joy?
Whoa. It was amazing. Just Riley and me forever. For 33 seconds.
I'm sadness.
Oh, hello. I'm Joy. So, can I just, if you could, I just want to fix that. Thanks. And that was just the beginning. Headquarters only got more crowded from there.
Very nice. Okay, looks like you got this. Very good. Oh, that's right, parent. Ah, look out!
That's Fear. He's really good at keeping Riley safe.
Easy, huh? How about? Oh, we're good. We're good.
Whew,
Thank you.
good
Thank you
job.
very much.
And we're back.
Here we go. All right, open.
This looks new.
Think it's safe?
What is it?
Okay, caution. There is a dangerous smell, people. Hold on, what is that?
This is disgust. She basically keeps Riley from being poisoned, physically and socially.
That is not brightly colored or shaped like a dinosaur. Hold on, guys. It's broccoli! Well, I just saved our lives. Yeah, you're welcome.
Riley, if you don't eat your dinner, you're not going to get any dessert.
Wait, did he just say we couldn't have dessert?
That's anger. He cares very deeply about things being fair.
So that's how you want to play it, old man? No dessert? Oh, sure. We'll eat our dinner right after you eat this.
Right. Here comes an airplane.
Oh, airplane. We got an airplane, everybody.
All right. So what I love about that video is that it reminds us, right, that that's what's happening for us all the time, right? So those primary emotions, right, are happening. So we're having a stimuli and where we've got joy and anger and sadness and fear and disgust, right? These are the emotions, right, that we are all going to have during the holidays, okay? Primary emotions last anywhere from like 30 to 90 seconds if we do nothing about them, okay? They come and they go. So if you think about small children like Riley in the video, that's how they live their life, right? Their brain is only designed, it's only wired until about the age of 4 to simply experience emotions very mindfully in the present moment, right? There's sadness and then all of a sudden something happy happens and then there's joy, right? Those primary emotions are critically important. Now, at the ages of like 4 and 5 and 6, with brain development, we start to be able to think about our emotions, okay? And it actually becomes much harder to be mindful of our emotions because we have an emotion and then very quickly we think about them, right? We apply cognition, right? So instead of a little kid having a toy taken out of their hands and they're feeling like I'm sad, now it's sadness followed quickly with that always happens to me, right? Why does my mom always let my older brother or sister take the toys from me? Nobody cares about me as much as they care about my older sibling. Whoa, right? Now look at all of the emotions that I have created, right? Simply by thinking, okay? This is what gets us in trouble, okay? It gets us in trouble because we don't pay attention to when we start thinking about emotions. And here's what we know about these emotions. We call them secondary. There's a primary emotion, then we think about it, right? And then we create another one or we perpetuate, right? We perpetuate those emotions, okay? So what we know, right, is that secondary emotions happen when we think about them. Now, there's another interesting phenomenon about secondary emotions, which is that they can kind of sometimes come in even without our awareness and save us and help us avoid painful or difficult primary emotions. Sometimes people can feel a lot of sadness, but because sadness is uncomfortable or not socially accepted, they can feel anger. So what you get is a lot of anger, right? When in fact, the primary emotion is maybe sadness or fear, okay? So this can go with any of those emotions that were on that initial list, okay? So how many people on this webinar, right, have felt sort of fear or worry about how something is going to happen or unfold with one of your loved ones or during a holiday season? But what you see is not the worry. What you see is a lot of anger, right? A lot of anger or yelling, right? Oh, this is so great. This new Zoom update. I'm getting floating thumbs up. It's amazing. I love it. This is great. Yes. Right. And then what happens if what we know about those secondary emotions is that we can keep the thinking going And those secondary emotions can last for hours, for days, for months. And let me tell you, I have worked with people, sadly, for years, right? For years, they have kept these feelings going. And what we also know about those primary emotions, they last 60 to 90 seconds. Much rather be there. I would much rather to be in the primary emotion of what is happening, use my self-validation skills, get some validation skills from others, right? Have it live in a wave for 60 to 90 seconds. Now, it could get prompted again, but at least I'm going through that wave and I'm moving, right? I'm not keeping those emotions up high. Okay. Now, what's wonderful about mindfulness is that you can pay attention to these emotions and you can figure out that you're in a secondary emotion and you can actually shift to a primary emotion. Okay. Vulnerabilities like the holidays can make it harder to be mindful and they can make those secondary emotions more robust. We have lots of memories. People often have trauma, disappointment, sadness, right? That lead us to those secondary emotions. It leads us to being not in the present and suffering way more than twice, right? 3 times, 4 times. What our task is to just go back and pay attention and experience it like we saw Riley experience. What are the primary emotions? Now, the good news about primary emotions is that they always make sense, right? So that when we validate those primary emotions, they go down even more. When we validate secondary emotions, okay, it helps a little bit, but it usually feels like, that's not quite it, right? That's not quite it. And again, this is for ourselves, paying attention to those primary emotions, and for our loved ones, right? And has anybody ever experienced somebody coming in, somebody they know, and it could be a loved one, it could be a friend, it could be a coworker, and they come in really, like my kids would say, they come in hot, right? And they're angry and they're venting. And then pretty quickly you realize, like, oh, wow, right? Like, I think you're disappointed, right? And then you use your excellent validation skills and you say something like, you must have been really disappointed that you were left out of the holiday party, right? Or that you must have felt really disappointed when you were, you opened up your Instagram or your TikTok and you saw this whole group of people going out and celebrating and you weren't invited. Okay. Came in hot secondary, but it wasn't until I validated the primary, you must be really disappointed, right? That the emotion starts to go down. All right, so where is the skill? Here is the skill. The skill is mindfulness of current emotions, okay? That is the DBT skill we've made over at 3 East and now out in the world. There's a little, we call it training wheels to mindfulness of current emotion because people felt like, what? I don't understand. So we're going to break it down. So you're going to use a sunwave. No, not. Okay, so what is amazing is that our body gives us a lot of information about how we feel. And it does so through sensations. Okay, so you're going to do a body scan. You're going to pay attention. And it's actually just taking a moment during the holidays or any kinds of stressful situations and checking in with how you feel to figure out that primary emotion is going to be one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourself. Okay, so you're going to anchor yourself in the sensations. What do you find? Are you clenching your jaw? Do you have butterflies in your stomach? Do you have tension between your shoulder blades? Is your neck tight? Are you clenching your fists, right? Do you feel tears in your eyes? Do you feel redness in your face? Where are your sensations? Okay. Once you found the sensations, you're going to go down to your urge. Okay. The urge, what is wonderful is all emotions have action urges because one of the 3 functions of emotions is to motivate action. So you're going to ask yourself, what do I want to do or not do? Do I want to yell? Do I want to scream? Do I want to run? Do I want to hide? Do I want to curl up under my bed? Do I want to talk? Do I want to be quiet? Do I want to cry? What is my urge? Now, once you take your sensations that you have now been mindful of, okay, and breathe into those, and you pay attention to your urges, you will have enough information to name your emotion. So you name your emotion, okay? Now that you've got your emotion, you're going to ride it like a wave. The model of emotion is that of a wave. There's a prompting event, an interpretation, body sensations, and then you're going to peek, right? There's going to be some like sort of physical ways that you may demonstrate it, facial expressions, right? And then the emotion is going to dissipate, right? Now, when we live in the secondary emotion, we keep it up at the peak. What we want you to do is ride the wave, and you're going to do it using what we call in DBT your observe and describe skills, okay? And the beauty of it is all you have to do is go back to those sensations and urges. What are you going to notice, right? I'm going to notice the warmth on my cheeks. I'm going to notice the urge to cry. I'm going to notice the butterflies in my stomach. I'm going to notice a feeling of heaviness, right? Observe, describe, observe, describe. It's very boring. That's what keeps the emotion in the primary emotion and running its course. Observe and describe. No editorials, no nothing, right? So here's your no and you're not. No enhancing or suppressing. Don't invalidate yourself. Don't do the things that ramp it up. Saying you're too sensitive, calling yourself a baby, saying things shouldn't be. And at the same time, don't suppress it. Just let it be, right? And then you're going to remind yourself that you are not your emotion. This is like a wonderful little semantic trick where you are going to say, I am feeling, right? Sadness, anger, whatever it is, right? Fear. You're not going to say, I am sad, okay? Because that doesn't send the message to the brain that the emotion can move and run its course, okay? And you're going to remind yourself that the emotions don't last forever, because if you are a sensitive person at all, you may have moments where you think like, this is never going to get better. And it's just not how emotions work. Okay. So you're going to practice the skill of mindfulness of current emotion. When the overwhelm hits, right? Overwhelm, big catch-all, right? Not a primary emotion. When you start to feel that feeling, you're going to be mindful of your current emotion. You're going to figure out what it is, and you're going to validate it. Okay. You're going to be mindful. Now, once you've got this, here's our next set of skills. You're going to be mindful of your state of mind. Okay. 3 states of minds in DBT. None of them are better than the other. It's about what's effective in the moment. Okay. Emotion mind. Okay. You're going to think about the sort of the metaphor of a pair of glasses. The lens of emotion mind is how I feel in this moment. Okay. So it's a fast-paced, emotion-driven, kind of immediate gratification, very mood-dependent kind of state of mind, right? And it's the state of mind that can be very, very helpful, right? When we want our emotions to influence how we react very quickly. If I'm in a house and I smell smoke, I want to quickly get out. And it's the fear in my emotion mind that drives my behavior, okay? Now, many people that come to DBT spend a little bit too much time in emotion mind, right? And that's where they get kind of mood dependent behavior, where they start making decisions based on how you feel in the moment, okay? But there's wonderful parts. Emotion mind keeps us safe a lot of the time. We use emotion mind when we're falling in love, when we're grieving, when we're connecting emotionally, okay? The other side is a reasonable mind, okay? If you go back to the metaphor of the lenses, the lens is seeing the world through what you know, okay? So it's devoid of emotion, but what you know. So it's very practical, there's pros and cons, it's very logical, okay? This state of mind can be very, very helpful in making these types of decisions, right? That really demand a lot of logic. Now, they can get us in trouble because sometimes we make logical decisions and forget about the emotional piece that we need, okay? But again, I often tell people it's about shifting the states of mind, right? So the people I work with, like I'll work with some kids in college or in high school, and I'll say, I want you to be able to have a fight with your boyfriend and go take the SATs, right? That's how skilled I want you to be able to do at shifting your state of mind, okay? In the middle is our third state of mind, which is our wise mind. The wise mind looks at the world through both what we know and how we feel. Okay, these are wise-minded decisions. They're slow, they're difficult because they're integrating both states of mind, different areas of your brain. Okay, they're decisions that, unlike emotion mind and even sometimes reasonable mind, don't have unintended consequences. Okay, it's how I know and what I feel. Okay, And in the holidays, we have to be very mindful of what state of mind is going to be effective, right? So we pay attention, we become aware, right? We're aware of our emotions by using our sunwave no not. We're aware of these states of mind, right? Because we also want to interact with people. We want to be able to see the states of mind in other people. One of the biggest mistakes that we make is we try to become rational with somebody in emotion mind. It does not work, right? The mind, when it's in emotion mind, is not designed for problem solving and reason. That's what the reasonable mind is, right? Emotion mind is powerful, right? It's easy to get pulled into emotion mind, but you cannot reason somebody out of emotion mind. Use validation, okay? Use emotion regulation skills. So mindful of your current emotion and mindful of your state of mind. These are universal. We all are constantly moving between these states of mind. All right, the bigger challenge. You got to now be mindful of your current emotion, mindful of your state, right? The state of your emotion mind, and now be mindful of your thoughts. Okay, our thoughts can take us into very, very problematic places. I want you to be able to say things to yourself like, I notice the thought, right? I just noticed I had a lot of worry thoughts. Here's Gillian, here's my thoughts. When there's a separation by mindfulness and awareness, I can now work with these thoughts. Okay, now what do I want to do with these thoughts? Do I continue to think of these thoughts? Do I shift my mind? Do I write them down? Do I share them with somebody else? Do I cope ahead because they're worry thoughts? So you're going to be curious about your thoughts, okay? You're going to remember you're not your thoughts. I'm here and here are my thoughts. You have no control over the thoughts that your mind produces. This is really, really, really important. You cannot control those thoughts. We all have thoughts that we don't like, or wish we didn't have. You cannot control the thoughts that your mind produces. What you can control is what you do with your thoughts. You have no control over your thoughts if you can't be mindful of them first. Catch them. They're just thoughts. That's all they are. Sometimes you're just going to notice a thought and you're just going to let it go. Whew. I'll sometimes think to myself, well, that's an interesting thought. That was a very interesting thought that just popped through my mind, right? Some people label their thoughts, past thought, present thought, angry thought, happy thought, worry thought. Okay? You got to be mindful of your thoughts so that you and your state of mind can work with your thoughts, not your emotions and your thoughts dragging you through the holiday season or through life. So I want to talk about judgments because judgments are often fused with thoughts. Okay. And when I talk to people about judgments, the most interesting thing is that most people don't actually know what a judgment is. Okay. Judgments are shorthands. Okay. Judgmental thinking is shorthand. It is taking a complicated concept and paring it down into one word, right? That one word could be positive or negative. So we often think about judgments as negative, but good is just as judgmental as bad, right? If you say, Gillian, how was your weekend, right? And I say, my weekend was good, right? I took a whole weekend, right? Let's say Friday at 5 to Sunday when I went to bed, and I summed it up into one word. How much do you know about my weekend? Nothing. Nothing. You know that it generally was good. You have no idea what I did or who I was with or what happened at Halloween. Nothing, right? Judgments by definition shut off curiosity. That's the function. Shorthand, move on, right? Which sometimes is very, very effective. Okay, so the goal is not eradicate judgments. The goal is mindfulness of judgments, awareness of judgments, okay? We know that negative judgments, especially about ourselves and people we love, enhance painful emotions within ourselves, okay? They can create dysregulation for ourselves and others, right? Which we don't need any more of, okay? You can learn to be mindful of your judgments. You just catch them. Good, bad, ugly, pretty, stupid, smart, what should or should not be. These are all judgments, okay? And again, if they are not problematic, that's fine. If they are creating problems, don't use them. Be non-judgmental. In DBT, we say just be behaviorally specific, right? Just describe, fact-based, what is happening, right? And judging is unnecessary, okay? You don't need to be judgmental of the fact that you're having judgments. Our culture is a very judgmental culture. We speak very quickly, and we have a lot of shorthands, okay? So you're going to be mindful of your thoughts, but particularly mindful of judgments that get in the way and create your suffering or suffering in others, okay? Right? So I just want to walk you through quickly, just to hit home the difference when we are observing and describing mindfully your emotions. Because here's the thing, more times than not, we experience an emotion and mindlessly and without awareness, we unintentionally enhance our suffering, right? Which you can learn to not do. So if I am unmindful and I'm noticing anxiety, I might say I'm getting anxious. This is bad, judgment. I will always be anxious. This is awful, judgment. This will never end. What is wrong with me? Now, what do you notice? We can put this all together. What has happened to my emotion? I've cranked it up. I was just getting anxious. Now I'm full on anxious and self-loathing. Okay? So what did we see? I mindlessly cranked up my emotion. Okay? I also fell into secondary emotions, right? I was just getting a little afraid of something, right? But now I have fear, right? And maybe shame, right? And maybe disgust, secondary emotion. That line on the left side is going to keep me feeling miserable for some time until I catch it and I start to get mindful and do my sunwave and describe my emotion mindfully. I'm getting anxious. My heart is racing. My palms are sweating. I'm breathing more quickly. My thoughts are racing. I feel hot. Okay. At a minimum, I'm going to keep my anxiety where it is and not let it creep up. Okay. Emotion mind is often like a boulder rolling down a hill, and everything in its way keeps, accumulating and making the boulder bigger and bigger. Right. So this is a paying attention. I'm going to use my sun wave. I'm going to understand primary and secondary emotions, right? I'm going to observe and describe. I'm going to be mindful, right? And pay attention to that state of mind. All right. So paying attention, we're going back to Jon Kabat-Zinn, paying attention on purpose in a particular way. Why when I could give you, there's hundreds of DBT skills. I could just give you a couple DBT skills. Why are we so focused on paying attention and awareness? Because the biggest hijacker of our attention are strong emotions, right? That's why kids and loved ones make us the most dysregulated, right? Make us like, I teach a lot of skills for parents. I run a lot of parent groups. And people will say, well, all these skills, you might be, you must be just like an amazing parent. And I say, guess what? I lose it at my kids just like you do, because they're my kids. My attention is pulled, hijacked often, right, by the emotions that I feel about my kids. I'm not as connected to the parents' kids that I work with. Sometimes I've never even met them, right? So it's much easier for me. So it's the hijacker of emotion. It's what keeps us up late at night thinking about things, right? The holidays often are powerful pullers of our attention, right? When our attention is pulled by strong emotion, it creates an additional emotional vulnerability, right? We're distracted. We're not sleeping. We're not eating, right? And now our foundation from those ABC please skills is beginning to crumble, okay? But when you pay attention in these particular ways, sunwave, mindfulness of thought, right? Mindfulness of states of mind, you can shift your focus and attention, right? But paying attention on purpose takes practice, okay? This is like not like no other, just like every other skill, you have to practice, okay? Practice mindfulness when you don't need it. This is what we always tell people, so that it's there with some muscle memory when you do, okay? I always say there's a million mindfulness apps or YouTube, and it's like gateway mindfulness. Find one that works, Okay. Some you have to pay for, some you don't. Last time I checked, Insight Timer, you didn't have to pay for it, and they had a ton. There's Insight Timer, there's Headspace, there's Buddhify, there's 10% Happier, there's Calm, and then there's an entire world of YouTube that will take you through mindfulness practices. Practice. Mindfulness and attention and awareness is a muscle in your brain. You have to work out the muscle. It's just like going to the gym. In the same way that when we drop, I always say when I drop my mindfulness practice, I have atrophy. I got to get back into it. I got to strengthen the muscle, and very quickly it strengthens again, right? And then there it is. I have better capacity to shift my attention. Okay. So gift yourself a mindfulness practice every day, right? Do it today. It's a great way. If you're in the countdown, if you're following the countdown, try to practice. And you can literally practice I'll take 2 minutes. It's a little bit hard sometimes to get it all for 2 minutes, but if you can give me 2 minutes, I'll take it. Give me 10, even better. 10 minutes, your brain will change. So it is, if you can pay attention, if you can be aware of your state of mind and these emotions, the holidays will be a different experience. All right. So you're going to pay attention, right, to your emotions, right, to the things that make you emotionally vulnerable. Now pay attention, right? It is your job to know your emotional vulnerabilities and then figure out what skills you can use, right? Be mindful of your thoughts and judgments, right? Don't judge them. Thoughts are thoughts, judgments show up. Just notice them. Pay attention to your self-care. What do you need to stay steady? Right? Doesn't matter what other people need. It just matters what you need, right? Pay attention to joy whenever you can. Marsha Linehan says you have to live an antidepressant life. It is our job to find joy. Don't wait for joy to come to you. Joy comes differentially to different people. Some people get a lot of joy. Some people don't get a lot of joy. You have to go out and find it. You have to calibrate your attention in the same way you're going to calibrate it to judgments and your emotions. You're going to calibrate it to joy. I'd like to notice joy when I get a nice cup of coffee. It is everywhere. It doesn't have to be big joy, just has to be somewhere. And pay attention to gratitude. There's wonderful, wonderful research on gratitude and mood. So I always think in the craziness of the holidays and the stress, there's always some gratitude in there. So really pay attention to it. All right, so building awareness gives you choice. I'm going to leave you with this. Mindful awareness allows you to sit in the space between urges to do something and doing it. In that space is where you are empowered to find choice. If you do your sunwave and you pay attention to the emotion, you can shift from primary to secondary. If you're mindful of your thoughts and your urges, you can pause and decide if you're going to proceed or you're going to stop or you're going to do something totally different. Okay. There is freedom in awareness and attention. So I want you to build the awareness this holiday season, right? So that you have a sense of choice and empowerment, right? And calm, okay? Because again, the thoughts are going to come, the emotions are going to come, right? It's what you do and how you work with them that's going to be the change. All right. So hopefully I left enough time for some questions. I'm eager to see. Thank you for all the floating hearts and thumbs up. It's so nice because I can't see anybody. I'm like talking to myself. So I love this new Zoom update. It's amazing. So fun.
Thanks, Gillian. We appreciate your clear explanations of a lot of really deep topics. We do have a few more questions for you. The first one is, how can I, as a parent, support my daughter in shifting her focus and using mindfulness when she's in crisis?
Yeah, so this is tricky. In terms of DBT skills, I would say that mindfulness is the one that comes on board last for most people. And it is the one that people push back on the most. And mindfulness is not probably the best skill to use in crisis until you're really skilled at mindfulness. Because once you have a mindfulness practice, you can use that in crisis because you're very skilled at using mindfulness of current emotion and learning how to ride the wave. That takes a while, like a while to do. So probably those, you're looking more at like maybe mindfulness of current emotion if they know how to use it. That sunwave can be an option. But again, it's questionable. It depends on your child. If your child is really open to coaching from you as a parent, which is unfortunately a smaller percentage of the kids, at least that I work with, if they're open to that, walking through a sunwave and providing a lot of validation and then maybe some distress tolerance if they're in crisis is the way to go. Again, if kids are really, 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 really dysregulated, your skill is validation. That is the skill to use because you can't push for change when people are that dysregulated. But what you can do is use mindfulness for yourself and be very aware of your own emotions and not get yourself caught up in the secondary emotions and the panic and the frenzy that can just make it harder for you to be able to work with your child, and they can be more reactive to your emotions.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing the sunwave acronym. I found that personally really helpful. I'm sure others did.
Great. It's a great one.
Yeah. Okay, next question. When practicing mindfulness toward a primary emotion, how do we balance awareness and acceptance with the need to respond or change the situation that elicited the emotion, especially when it relates to well-being or safety?
Okay, there's a lot there.
Would you like me to read it again for you?
I think I've got
Okay.
it, but if I miss something, just remind me. Okay, so often parents often, or family members, need to use mindfulness of current emotion and be aware of your own emotion to be the most effective, right? So what can happen in crisis is that people can move very quickly into a secondary emotion like anger, um, and that can make it hard to actually address the crisis at hand. So really in those states, you have to take a breath, take a sunwave, do a sunwave, notice what you're feeling. If I am frightened, okay, what do I need to do? Because usually what happens in the sunwaves, if you do the sunwave when you're angry, you often, as adults, like sometimes there's primary anger, but most of the time there's something else in there. I like to think about thinking about secondary emotions not as wrong, but as like just not the whole story. So if you're going to be effective in managing, any kind of situation that has crisis or dangerous behaviors, you need to be mindful of your emotion. You need to use skills to bring down your intensity of your emotion so that you can effectively intervene. And probably you have to check your judgments, would be my guess, because sometimes our judgments then make us very ineffective in having the conversations that we need to have. The other piece of it is if you're very dysregulated, it's very, very hard to validate. So the more emotionally dysregulated we are, the more tunnel vision and sort of self-focused we become, which is the opposite of what we need to validate someone else. It's very, very hard. The more dysregulated we get, our validation skills fall apart because we can't perspective take. And that's just a brain function, the brain wiring kind of problem. So I would say in those situations, be mindful of your emotion, be mindful of your judgments, figure out what you need to be effective, and then intervene.
All right, thank you. And we're receiving several questions about the sun wave. Would you mind sharing that slide again?
Yeah. Can I get there?
Yeah, people would like to be reminded of what it stands for.
There you go. This is
And
this is actually a life-saving skill because you got to lead with the primary emotion to get what you want or you need.
And for anybody who joined late, Gillian did graciously agree to share the slides. So when we upload the recording to the website, there will be a copy of the slides. So you'll be able to refer back to this as well. Okay. And then also we have a few questions about validating emotions. Can you clarify, do we want to validate the primary or the secondary emotion?
Yes, you want to validate the primary emotion. Now, Sometimes you're not getting the primary emotion. So you end up seeing what you see is the secondary emotion. Now there's some good clues that you might be in the secondary emotion, which is people will often say, yeah, kind of like, yeah, that's almost what it's like. So you don't tend to get that like when you invalidate somebody, you tend to get a big escalation of emotion where they tell you how little you understand them or how wrong you are, or you get a complete shutdown, right? Secondary emotions, you sort of get this like middle spot where they're like, you kind of get it, Jillian, but not quite, which is a flag for me that something else is there. So then I go back to that level one validation and I start asking more questions. Okay, so if I sort of got it, what am I missing? And then you very, very quickly, they will help you get into get into the primary emotion, and then you'll be able to validate it. But sometimes you only see the secondary, so you got to start with what you see.
Thank you. The next one is, if someone struggles to recognize their emotions, would suggesting what they might be feeling help them, or do you think it would be counterproductive?
So this is a great question. It is, and I wish I had a really great, clear answer for you. It's totally dependent on the person. Okay, so for some people that have a very hard time identifying and observing and describing emotions, when you ask them how they feel, they get super dysregulated because they have no idea, right? And so for some of them, it's like a menu works out. Do you think it could be this or this? Other times that just dysregulates them more, and really they just need to learn in a very didactic way what the emotions are. So like Marcia has a handout, or maybe it's Alec. I can't remember which ones we use. They both have them, but I think it might be Marcia in her adult manual has all of the primary emotions, and it's a very, very densely filled up sheet. And it has like, here's some ways it could feel in your body. Here's some thoughts associated with it. Here's some urges. Here's some common names for it. And so they just learn didactically, and then they start to use the sunwave.
Okay, and you mentioned anniversaries around this time of year may be triggering. Do you have any specific tips for specific dates that might be difficult for people?
I mean, anniversaries are anniversary. I mean, any day of the year can be an anniversary. I mean, and again, this goes back to paying attention to what was hard last year. Is Christmas Eve different than Christmas Day? Is New Year's Eve or New Year's Day? So again, this is about paying attention on purpose and with awareness, and you have a wonderful opportunity because it's November 3rd to talk to loved ones and think about, pay attention yourself. Like, what are the days that are difficult? I mean, certainly, I mean, there's lots of, between the Christmas and New Year's that week, tends to be very, very challenging for people. Very, very challenging for people. But anniversaries are anniversaries, and anniversaries are the meanings that we make of the days based on experiences that we've had on those days. So, it's less about here are the days and more about having conversations and paying attention to what are days that could be challenging, right? And then what do you need to do to help yourself do that day different this year?
Do that day different this year. Okay. All right. Few more questions. We have time for a few more. The next is, if there is, as someone who is new to mindfulness meditation, this person is wondering how quieting the mind during the practice actually helps develop insight or improve emotion regulation in daily life. How does that happen?
Okay. So, right. So mindfulness is about paying attention. You don't actually have a quiet mind. Sometimes you have a really busy, busy mind, and your entire practice. We start all of our parent groups with like 2 to 3 minute mindfulnesses, and some days I'll do the mindfulness practice and it'll be great. Like it'll feel so good. I'll drop right in, totally pay attention. Other days it'll be like the longest 2 minutes of my life, right? I'm thinking about this, come back to my anchor point. Think about this, come back to my anchor point. Think about this, come back to my anchor point, right? So, you may or may not quiet the mind in mindfulness. And remember that mindfulness is not relaxation. You may get relaxed after a particularly sort of steady practice, but there's nothing, it is a very, very like challenging attentional practice as you move your attention from one space to the next. Now, we know that when they study the brains of people that do a lot of mindfulness, and they do a lot of studying of monks that spend a lot of time, what they see is an upregulation in their prefrontal cortex and a downregulation in their limbic system, right? And so people with borderline personality disorder have, this is why it's so perfect. People with borderline personality disorder have an upregulation in their limbic system, like it's overactive, and an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. Okay, so it is actually shifting, right? So it's slowing, calming the more we practice mindfulness, down regulating the limbic system and upregulating that prefrontal cortex, right? And they can see, I think, 20 minutes a day of mindfulness practice and brain scans, they can see changes actually that happen in the brain. So, and we know that just sort of people that practice a lot of mindfulness experience less reactivity, just less emotional reactivity, and are less judgmental, right? Which, by the way, are two amazing things for our relationships, right? Whether it's a parenting relationship, a partnership, a friendship, that being less judgmental and less reactive are wonderful things.
All right, I think we have time for just one more. Jillian, what do you recommend if my negative emotions are valid, but being mindful is difficult?
Yeah, so paying attention is painful, right? So often people that will come to DBT have gone to great lengths to not pay attention. That's what's so interesting about DBT, right? They have found lots and lots of different ways, sometimes adaptive, sometimes maladaptive, to avoid paying attention to emotions. And what we do in DBT is we say, no, 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 we want you to pay attention, right? It's a little bit like the only way to the other side is through it, right? That actually what we know is that the suffering, right? The suffering comes from the avoidance of the emotion, which often enhances the emotion. That if we mindfully pay attention to the emotion, you can move through it just like that wave, right? And you can get to the other side, and it's actually much less painful. But it takes a lot of practice. And sometimes you need to pay attention to those emotions and use some of those other skills, like some of those distress tolerance skills, right? Or some of those emotion regulation skills in the beginning, right? Ultimately, what we're looking for is for people to most of the time be able to do a sunwave and just ride out the wave. That takes a long time. That's why we have distress tolerance and emotion regulation skills as well.